I was looking at this stack of research we have on the table, the Western Australian curriculum, papers on pedagogy, studies on executive function, and I realized something.
Hmm.
We usually talk about education like it's a series of hurdles. Can they read? Can they count to 100? Can they, sit still? It's all very checklisty.
It is. We tend to view learning as this sort of linear race where the
hmm
goal is to get to the finish line fluency, mastery as fast as you possibly can.
But looking at these sources, especially the ones on the transition from pre-primary through year one, the reality seems so much more structural. It's
Yep.
less like a race and more like construction.
That is the perfect analogy. It really is. If you try to put a heavy roof on a house before you've poured the concrete slab or framed the walls, the whole thing just collapses.
Yeah.
Today is really about understanding that architecture. We're going to map out the cognitive trajectory of the early primary years, from that foundation in pre-primary to the framing in year one, and then, the consolidation in year two.
And I want to get specific today. We aren't just going to say play is good. I want to know why. What is mechanically happening in the brain? I want to understand why the curriculum seems to shift so noticeably when a kid turns 6. So let's start at ground level, pre-primary.
Ground level is exactly the right term. In Western Australia and similar systems, this is the year before formal schooling, before grade 1. And the main misconception here is that the curriculum is just, well, waiting for real school to start.
Right. I think a lot of analytical parents, people like us, they look at a pre-primary classroom, they see a sand pit and a dress-up corner, and they think, okay, this is cute. But when do they learn physics?
But here's the thing. They are learning the prerequisites for physics. They just aren't using a textbook.
Yeah.
The sources we looked at, especially the ones on the power of play, identify this stage as the critical period for building executive function.
You hear that term thrown around a lot. What does that actually mean for a 5-year-old? What's happening in the brain?
It's essentially the air traffic control system of the mind. It's all happening in the prefrontal cortex. It involves 3 main gears: working memory, mental flexibility, and inhibitory control.
Inhibitory control.
The ability to stop yourself from doing something you want to do.
So not eating the marshmallow.
Correct. But think about why that matters for academics. To learn to read later on, a child has to sit in a chair, ignore the bird outside the window, focus on these little squiggles on a page, and suppress the urge to just get up and run.
Okay, so that is pure inhibitory control.
It is. And if you don't build that muscle in pre-primary, the academic stuff in year 1 becomes infinitely harder.
So this is where the play comes in.
This is exactly where it comes in. Let's take the classic shop scenario in a classroom. To an adult, it looks like kids are just passing plastic fruit around, but mechanically, a child has to hold a rule in their head: I'm the shopkeeper, not the customer. That's working memory. They have to negotiate prices, that's mental flexibility, and they have to not scream when someone buys the banana they wanted. That's emotional regulation.
So the play is the gym. It's where they lift the weights of executive function.
And if you strip that away and replace it with worksheets too early, you're asking them to lift heavy academic weights with undeveloped muscles. You get burnout. You get behavior issues.
That brings us to the other big pillar of this foundation phase, oral language. The Foundations for Success source was pretty blunt about this. It said, oral language is the single biggest predictor of literacy.
It is, and this is often counterintuitive for the kind of parent who really wants to see results. We tend to think literacy starts with recognizing letters A, B, C, but literacy actually starts with sounds.
Phonemic awareness.
Yeah. Before a child can map a sound to a letter, they have to be able to hear and, manipulate that sound in the air. If I say cat, can they hear that it's made of 3 sounds, C-A-T?
Right.
If they can't distinguish those sounds orally, showing them the letter C is, well, it's meaningless. It's just an abstract symbol.
So the work of pre-primary isn't writing essays. It's conversation. It's rhyming.
The curriculum is so clear on this. The goal is listening and speaking in complex sentences. A child who can tell you a detailed story about their weekend, using words like because suddenly after that, is far more ready for reading than a child who can quietly memorize flashcards but can't really hold a conversation.
That's a huge distinction. So we're building this being and belonging layer. They need to feel safe, communicate, control their impulses. And once that slab is poured, we move on.
The transition to year 1.
And this is often where I see the friction. The parents I know feel like pre-primary is this warm, fuzzy bubble, and then bam, year 1 is a cold shower. The desks appear. The expectations jump.
It can feel like a cliff if you aren't looking at the blueprint, but the Foundations and Expectations for Year 1 text describes it as a bridge. The key shift here is a move toward intentionality.
Intentionality. Okay, that sounds like teacher speak. Break that down for us.
In pre-primary, a lot of the learning is emergent. The teacher sets up the environment and the kids explore. In year one, the teacher takes the wheel a bit more often. We start to introduce short, focused periods of explicit instruction.
But the sources warn against throwing out the play entirely, right?
Oh, this is vital. The year one brain is still a 6-year-old brain. It still needs concrete hands-on experience. The difference is we're now working in the zone of proximal development.
Okay, I remember this from Psych 101. Vygotsky.
Vygotsky, yes. Imagine 3 circles. The inner circle is what a child can do all by themselves. The outer circle is what they can't do at all. That middle ring, that's the zone of proximal development. It's what they can do with help.
The just right challenge zone, the Goldilocks zone.
Exactly. In year one, we spend most of our time in that middle ring. We aren't just letting them play freely, but we aren't lecturing them on things they can't possibly grasp. We are constantly stretching them just a little.
So let's look at what that stretch actually looks like in the subjects. The sources gave a really clear breakdown. Let's start with literacy. We've moved from oral language to what?
Consolidation. This is where we start mapping those sounds they learned in pre-primary to the actual written codes. We are, in a very real sense, rewiring the visual cortex of the brain.
Rewiring is a strong word.
It's accurate, though. The human brain is hardwired to speak. It is not hardwired to read. We have to repurpose parts of the brain that are designed for recognizing faces and objects to recognize letters. That's why year one is so heavy on phonics blending sounds together.
Something in the research really stood out to me here. It said the goal in year one is accuracy, not fluency. Why is that distinction so important?
Because parents, and sometimes entire systems, get obsessed with speed. My kid is reading 50 words a minute, but if they're guessing those words based on the pictures or skipping the tricky vowels, they aren't actually reading. They're predicting.
They're hacking the system.
They are. And that hack falls apart in year 3 or 4 when the pictures disappear and the words get complicated. In year one, we want them to slow down. We want them to decode every single sound, even if it's painful to watch.
You're laying down the neural cables.
Exactly. And if you rush it, you get flimsy cables.
This connects to that invented spelling concept in the notes. Yep. This is something that drives perfectionist parents absolutely crazy. The kid writes phone as F-O-N.
And the instinct is to grab the red pen and say, no, 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 it's P-H.
Right. Why shouldn't we do that? Aren't we letting them practice the wrong thing?
If you correct them instantly, you're actually shutting down the encoding process. When a child writes F-O-N, they are showing you that they have analyzed the sound of the word and found the letters that match. That is a massive cognitive victory.
So they're doing the logic correctly, they just don't know the arbitrary rule yet that PH makes an F sound.
The conventions come later. If you demand perfect spelling in year one, the child will just stop using interesting words. They'll write cat instead of cheetah because they know how to spell cat. We want them to take risks with language.
Okay, let's pivot to numeracy. I feel like math is the other area where parents feel a lot of anxiety because the methods have changed so much. In pre-primary, we were counting blocks. What shifts in year one?
We move from counting to number sense. The curriculum target goes up to 120, but it's not just about reciting the numbers like a poem.
I can teach a parrot to say 1, 2, 3.
Right. The real question is, does the child understand that the number 25 is a quantity made up of 2 groups of 10 and 5 ones?
Place value.
It's the foundation of all arithmetic. And the sources are really clear that in year one, we still need physical materials. Counters, Unifix cubes, bundles of sticks, anything.
Why is that physical part so non-negotiable? I mean, eventually they have to do it in their heads.
Because math is an abstract concept. 3 doesn't exist in the wild. 3 apples exist. The brain needs to handle the concrete quantity for a long, long time before it can reliably manipulate the abstract symbol. If you take the blocks away too early, you get kids who memorize algorithms, carry the 1, without understanding what they are moving or why.
It's like learning a password versus actually having the key to the room.
And that password knowledge just collapses when they hit algebra. So in year one, we are obsessively focused on patterns and grouping with physical things.
Speaking of patterns, let's touch on science. The shift here, described in the curriculum, is from observation to inference.
This is a huge cognitive leap. In pre-primary, a child observes, the pavement is wet. In year one, we start asking why. We start building simple cause and effect chains.
The pavement is wet because it rained.
Or even better, the puddle is gone because the sun came out. We are introducing the scientific method in miniature. It's not just about memorizing facts like the names of planets. It's about understanding relationships. The curriculum actually declutters content in these years to allow for this depth.
I like that term, decluttering. It feels like we often try to cram too much in.
We do, and the research shows that a deep understanding of a few concepts, like the day-night cycle, is far more valuable than a shallow knowledge of 100 random facts.
So we've got the structure, we've built the executive function walls, crossed the intentionality bridge, and we're using concrete materials. Now, the million-dollar question for the parents listening, how do we support this at home without becoming the teacher?
This is where we need to talk about guided play.
Okay, so we talked about free play, the chaos, we talked about direct instruction, the lecture. Guided play is the middle ground.
It's the sweet spot. The Age-Appropriate Pedagogies research highlights this as the most effective method for this age group. It gets better results than free play or direct instruction alone.
Give me a concrete example. What does guided play look like in a living room?
Okay, let's say your child is building a Lego tower. Free play is just them building it alone. Direct instruction is you telling them, put the red brick here.
Okay.
Guided play is you sitting with them and asking, I noticed the tower keeps falling when we use the small bricks at the bottom. I wonder what would happen if we use the big ones.
You're scaffolding the thinking. You're not giving the answer, but you're guiding them to it.
You are injecting vocabulary and concepts, stability, width, balance into an activity they are already motivated to do. You're leveraging their engagement.
This connects to that home learning source we have. It explicitly warns against schoolification.
That is a trap so many of us fall into. We think supporting our kids means buying a desk and printing off worksheets.
I have definitely been guilty of buying the workbook from the supermarket.
And the research suggests that can actually backfire. If you push formal, seated academics too early at home, you can spike cortisol levels. You create anxiety around learning. You damage that very learner identity we talked about.
So if worksheets are out, what counts as curriculum at home?
Life is the curriculum. Cooking is chemistry and measurement. Setting the table is one-to-one correspondence, one fork for one person. Gardening is biology.
It sounds almost too simple. I think parents want to feel like they are doing something.
But look at the cognitive load of just baking a cake. You have to follow a sequence, an algorithm. You have to measure, that's math. You have to observe changes, that's science. And you have to wait for it to bake.
Inhibitory control.
Inhibitory control. That is a richer lesson than any worksheet.
So depth over breadth. If my kid is obsessed with ants, we don't need to force them to learn about butterflies. We just go deep on ants.
Deep on ants. Count the legs, watch how they move. Ask why they follow each other. The skills they learn from studying ants observation, categorization, inquiry, they transfer to everything else.
Before we close, I want to look briefly at where this bridge leads. We cross year 1, we head into year 2. What's the next phase of the architecture?
The trajectory shifts from learning to read to reading to learn.
It's a famous phrase, but it's a huge shift.
It is. In the early years, almost all the brain power is just used to decode the text. By year 2 and 3, ideally, that decoding becomes automatic. The brain then frees up bandwidth to actually think about what the text means.
But the sources warn us that this isn't like a light switch, is it?
Not at all. It is not linear. And this is maybe the most important thing for parents to hear. Development happens in spurts and plateaus. You might see a child struggle with a concept for 3 months. That's the plateau.
Right. It looks like nothing is happening.
It looks like nothing is happening. But under the surface, the connections are forming, and then suddenly the spurt. They just get it.
The popcorn effect.
Exactly. And if you panic during the plateau, you risk crushing the confidence they need for the spurt.
So if we zoom all the way out, we have this map. We have the foundation of being and belonging. We have the bridge of intentionality. We have the consolidation of skills. What is the one thing a parent should take away from this whole architecture?
There was a line in the school readiness research that I think just flips the script entirely. We usually ask, is the child ready for school? And we mean, can they hold a pencil? Can they write their name?
But the research suggests that's the wrong question.
You should be asking, is the child ready to participate in a learning community?
That shifts the focus completely away from academics.
It does. It asks, can they regulate their emotions enough to share a space? Can they communicate their needs? Can they handle the frustration of not being first? If the answer is yes, the brain is ready to learn to read. If the answer is no, no amount of flashcards will ever help.
That's a really powerful place to leave it. Instead of worrying about the academic checklist, maybe we just need to focus on the human being.
Build the human, and the student will follow.
Thank you for walking us through the blueprint today. It certainly makes the chaos of the early years feel a lot more structured.
It's a privilege to explore it.
And to you listening, thanks for trusting us with your time. Hopefully you can look at that pile of Lego a little differently tonight. We'll see you in the next deep dive.